Welcome to Annapolis Mosaics. Our program spotlights people in our community who are involved in activities designed to promote good human relations. I am Michael Keller, the chair of the Annapolis Human Relations Commission and your host. The commission is a city board that seeks to promote equal opportunity and to eliminate discrimination. My guest today is Jean Allert, who is the founder and executive director of the Samaritan Women. Jean, welcome to Annapolis Mosaics.
Thank you.
The Samaritan Women, for the background purposes for our viewers, is the first therapeutic residence program for victims of human trafficking in the Mid-Atlantic region. And we're going to start by talking about that subject to provide you viewers with a sense of what this issue is all about. So Jean, could you tell our viewers a little bit about what human trafficking is?
Sure. Human trafficking is a criminal enterprise, and by federal definition, it involves the recruiting, harboring, transporting, provisioning, or obtaining of persons 18 or older for the purposes of some form of involuntary servitude. It is modern-day slavery. Mm-hmm. What's important for us to understand about the definition of the law is that I said for persons 18 or older. If an individual involved in being used as an exploited person is under the age of 18, that individual is automatically considered a victim of human trafficking. That's what a lot of Americans don't understand, because we say things like child prostitute, which really shouldn't even exist in our lexicon. And so the individuals, if they're over the age of 18, what the law has to prove is force, fraud, or coercion was used to compel that person to engage in that act, whether that is a forced labor situation or commercial sex act.
Human trafficking has been described as a low-risk, high-profit crime. Could you elaborate on what that means?
Yes, sadly, we have a situation in the United States where we have a disparity of the laws across the United States and even here within Maryland, because the issue of solicitation and prostitution on the commercial sex side is handled at the county level. So each county could be different. We could have some counties who are very strident on the issue and others that are more lax. But across the state, we have relatively low penalties for people who would exploit children and the issues of commercial sex. Low penalties on those issues, perhaps lower practices in the prosecution of those types of crimes. But the money to be made in selling human beings is really astronomical, which is why they say that this is the second largest and fastest growing criminal enterprise in the world.
Looking back in terms of history, if you go back to the 19th century and how much it cost to purchase a slave then, as opposed to in constant dollars purchasing a slave today, how do they compare?
Yeah, that's excellent, because during that transatlantic slave era, 400-year period of time, in today's dollar, buying a human being would be about $40,000. That's the price on their head, if you will. But in today's dollar, given the economy, given the availability, we're talking about a human being valued at about $80.
And so I think that gives our viewers a sense of why this is a very profitable crime, and obviously one that's very, very low risk. But let's get a sense of the breadth of this issue. How many people do we believe are enslaved internationally, understanding that the figures that you may provide only represent the tip of the iceberg?
Absolutely, and I'm glad you say believe, because we really don't know. We liken it to domestic violence to suggest how many people have violence in the home. We don't know. Same is true with the issue of human trafficking, that because it's behind closed doors, because there's so much shame, it goes unreported, it's just a crime that's hard for us to quantify. But at least the extrapolated numbers that we work from at this point, and you can vet these through CNN Freedom Project, Polaris Project, those organizations, about 27 million people globally, which would be over 10 times the number of human beings who were enslaved during that transatlantic slave era.
Could you give our viewers sort of a demographic profile of the victims? How many are children? How many of them are women and girls? How many were, quote, recruited, end of quote, into it for sex purposes or for forced labor? What would be a good demographic profile of the victims?
Wow, there's a lot in that question. Globally, we look at that number of 27 million and estimate that about 2/3 of those individuals are labor trafficked. Mm-hmm. Domestically, as we look at the issue specifically of sex trafficking of individuals, it's currently being projected somewhere around 300,000 children in the United States, and those would be American children. Now, the Department of Justice estimates about 14,000 to 17,000 individuals are imported into the United States to be exploited here in our country. But go back to that other astounding number of 300,000 of our own children who are currently sex slaves in this country.
How are victims recruited, and why don't they just walk away?
Yeah, there are a lot of myths about this. Let me say that there are a range of tactics available to a predator, and I'll just give you a flavor of some of them. Certainly the most aggressive or guerrilla tactic is if you need a product, you just go get it. So we're talking about abduction. Mm-hmm. We're talking about kidnapping. We're talking about compelling somebody through force into this life. Okay. So that is certainly one tactic. And because the penalties are low and the profit is so high, the consequence of abducting or kidnapping a person is really well worth the return on investment. Mm-hmm. So there is that side of the equation. Then there's the more persuasive, what we would call the finesse process, which preys on people's dreams. Mm-hmm. So if you think, for example, a 13-year-old girl who may not be popular, maybe she doesn't have a boyfriend, she's not in the social circles, all it takes is for that perhaps 19-year-old boy to kind of work his way into her life and pretend to have a relationship with her. She's swooning, she's getting her needs met in terms of the kind of empty place in her heart that she's trying to fill, and soon she is literally getting sucked into this world, but in a much slower process than the guerrilla method.
Most people associate human trafficking with developing countries. If you ask the average person, they'll think of a country in the so-called third world. To what extent is this a problem in the United States?
Two responses to that. One, Americans like to overlook the fact that we have pockets of our own neighborhoods that are akin to developing nations. We have areas of great poverty, destitution, despair, and the demographics and sociographic factors in those areas could mirror a developing country. If we have a woman in Howard County or Baltimore City or Anne Arundel County who is so desperate and destitute that she is willing to sell her daughter, whether it's for drugs or for rent money, that is no different than the family in another country who's selling off their youngest daughter to feed the rest of the children. So I think that we have to wake up to the fact that we have similar factors in parts of our nation. But we should also not put on the blinders of stereotype and say, oh, this only happens to impoverished families or for those where there's violence in the home or there is sexual assault or those types of things, because it literally can be the affluent, straight A, still in high school, going to college, girl or boy, to whom this can happen.
It would be my guess that human trafficking is a problem across all states. But let's look at Maryland. To what extent is Maryland vulnerable to this particular kind of crime? And what factors in Maryland would contribute to this kind of human trafficking industry to emerge here?
Yeah, and we've been referring to Maryland as the perfect storm for the last 3 years because we know that Maryland has a lot of the factors geographically, demographically, that contribute to this being a concentrated area. At present, though, and again, at least anecdotally, the BWI area is being referred to as the third most lucrative destination in the nation for human sex trafficking. And it stands to reason if you look at this general area as along the I-95 corridor, an area of great affluence and poverty juxtaposed. We have the prison, we have the casino, we have the airport, we have the concentrations of ethnicities, the drug trade. We have a lot of transient. We have people who live in the suburbs who commute into the city, which changes the complexion of a community. And so we have a lot of the factors that we know make us very ripe, even though we don't have in Maryland a history of collecting this from a data perspective. But that is changing.
You made reference early on in our discussion this morning about Maryland's law. To what extent, given the fact that Maryland is the perfect storm, as you put it, to what extent are the laws of Maryland adequate to dealing with this problem? And if not, what needs to be changed?
Yeah, they really are not adequate at this point. And I would say that across the board, from a law enforcement, investigation, prosecution, and lawmakers' perspective, and citizens, we're all on a learning curve. We're all learning where the deficit areas are. There were some interesting laws passed in this last session that I think are going to positively contribute to a change. Not all of them directly human trafficking laws, but contiguous enough in the areas of protecting children, for example, providing for their care, recognizing that victimization goes beyond the age of 18. Those, I think, are positive steps, but we have a long way to go, for example, in the area of doing anything about the demand. So we can all day long say we need to protect victims, but if we don't go upstream and do something about the demand, we're always going to have this problem.
We're going to take a break now, but when we return, we'll be talking with Jean Allert about the way that you, as average citizens, can help to thwart human trafficking, some of the things that are going on in Anne Arundel County, and the Samaritan women.
Hi, I'm Annapolis Mayor Josh Cohen, and I want to tell you about a new free way for you to enjoy downtown Annapolis, our unique shops, our dining, our entertainment, and our historic maritime charm.
Did you know that Annapolis has a new circulator trolley that will shuttle you free from one end of the central business district to the other? Well, after parking at Knighton or Park Place Garage for just $5 a day, you can get on the circulator by simply raising your hand anywhere along the route and see what downtown Annapolis has to offer. For more information, go to annapolis.gov and click on circulator.
I'm talking today with Jean Allert, who is the founder and executive director of the Samaritan Women, which is a therapeutic residence program intended to help the victims of human trafficking. Jean, what can citizens do individually to thwart human trafficking?
Yeah, you know, this is such a frustrating issue. As we become educated on it, there is that anger that stirs up, and we just get frustrated because it seems like such an enormous problem. The education is the number one, first and foremost activity. We have a struggle in getting the word out about this problem. We need people to be better educated, but not just folks like you, but we need to reach into the schools and get to the children. We need to get to social workers and therapists so that they can better identify. We need to get into the hospitals so anybody who might potentially intersect with a victim could identify accurately and report. We need better education across all levels of law enforcement, emergency response. So education is still the number one objective. There is a whole realm of things that we could do as individual consumers. We sometimes overlook the issue of labor trafficking, but each one of us in our consumer behavior contributes in some way to the perpetuation of slave labor. I'll give you a website that your viewers will find fascinating.
Okay.
If they go to www.slaveryfootprint.org, so that's slaveryfootprint.org, excellent website where you as a private person answer questions about your lifestyle. And what it does is it calculates how many slaves work for you, how many people across the globe does it take to support your lifestyle? It's very jarring. Now, we understand that Google is putting some money into this application to help build out the second half, which would teach us how to change our consumer behavior so that we can reduce slavery in our lifetime.
Let's say that a citizen encounters a situation where she or he suspects that there may be human trafficking going on, and they have a need to act right away. What should they do? Who should they contact? Who can they call?
Absolutely. I am going to say across the board, nobody go vigilante, right? Okay. Please understand that jumping into a situation could cause that victim more harm. We have to be very, very careful because there's so much psychological control that's going on that you can't see. So don't jump into a situation. The best thing you can do is if you see imminent danger, clear threat, it's a 911 call. If it's a matter of a tip, there's a location that seems suspect, there's odd behavior, there is a person of interest, then that can be reported to the Human Trafficking Hotline. And that number is 888-373-7888.
Could you repeat that, please, Jean?
888-373-7888.
Now, it's my understanding that there's some work going on right here in Anne Arundel County to deal with thwarting human trafficking. Could you tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, I'm very excited to say that the Anne Arundel Women's Giving Together has funded a project that we're doing that is a public awareness initiative across the county. And this involves our reaching into agencies and businesses and schools to further the awareness. In Anne Arundel County, there is a more proactive police department, so you have some assets in your favor. But in addition to that, we need to take this out to the citizen level. So it's encouraging that there's a group like that who is realizing that we need to put some financial support and muscle behind the awareness piece. We also need to do a much better job of working with our lawmakers and making sure that they understand that this is really a priority for us. Because there are a lot of competing agenda issues in Annapolis.
Let's talk now about the Samaritan Women. Share with our viewers information about the facility, how many people are served there, where you get your clients from. I'm sure they would be very interested.
Yeah, you're kind of asking me to brag about my kids, so you know that could go on for a while.
And please do just that.
I'd be happy to. The Samaritan Women is located on a 23-acre estate in Baltimore City, and we have a large Victorian home that has a bed capacity of 14. We take only adult females in this program, are certainly optimistic about other entities establishing facilities for minors, for men, for transgendered youth. So there are other demographics that definitely need to be served, but we've started at least with adult females. And what we do in our program is invest in them academically, vocationally, spiritually, socially, and in their self-care. So we want to pour into the lives of these women and help them reestablish their lives as productive citizens, contributing citizens, and with the necessary therapeutic healing that they have to have.
What kind of specific services do you offer?
Wow, it's a wide range, and it is very much customized to the woman and what her situation is. So let's say, for example, she has an active case and she's actually willing to testify against her perpetrator. It could be providing her with legal support. It can be in coaching her and helping her testify. Certainly the mental health services and counseling services are across the board. Some of our women come in and they have been exploited for so long. The youngest we had was, her terror began at age 4. When you take someone that young, and with the average age of induction into forced prostitution at 12, we have women who don't have basic skills in caring for themselves, domestic skills, and so we pour into them with those areas so that they can be rather independent and autonomous as a person. Certainly the spiritual healing is very important because there's great wounding that has gone on, and then connecting them with the community, which is one of the things that we love to boast about, is we have such a tremendous support from the community. We get about 100 volunteers every weekend to work on the farm, to come support the property, and then some volunteers who work directly with the ladies. because it's our hope that, as a woman leaves our program, she then re-enters society and she's got a network of friends already.
Now the Samaritan Women also has 2 vocational programs too. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, because we also operate Baltimore City's largest farm, and in fact we are launching the culinary program, that will allow women to enter into the field of food service and food production, which is a very open field. You know, when we talk about sustainable business, certainly agriculture and food will always be sustainable because we'll always eat. So those are good industries for our women to learn skills and be able to plug in vocationally at a lot of different levels. The other area that we have recently developed and plan to expand is entrepreneurship. Because as a woman perhaps might have felony convictions, she might have a past that's frankly hard to live down when you're in an interview situation. We want to see that she can go around those barriers. And so small business, you asked earlier about third world countries. Well, what we do in third world countries to offer micro enterprise, we can be doing here in the United States as well.
I know that each of the programs that you offer to the women are based on their own unique circumstances. But just to get a general sense, how long do women on average spend in the program, and what's the range?
Sure. We've designed the program to be 2 years, but we've also established that we're not going to force anybody out just based on the clock.
Right.
Everybody grows and at their own rate. So roughly a 2-year period of time. That varies based on her own goals. I will tell you that I have a resident who's already asked if she can stay 5 years because she wants to finish college. So she wants to stay there the whole time. And we'll just have to see how that goes. We do take women 18 and up. And generally the older end of the spectrum tends to be in the 40s.
Okay. The Samaritan Women are branching out into a new area, and that is to serve homeless women veterans. Why did you decide to expand into this area?
Well, largely because the Veterans Administration kept asking us if we would make beds available. And not to make light of that, we really do have a desperate situation in terms of housing for women in our general area. So what we've done is allocated a portion of the beds to the VA so that they can place women into our facility. But you know what's turned out to be, well, let's say an unfortunate but fortunate set of circumstances is that a large number of our women who come from a veteran referral actually have experienced some of the same things that our trafficked victims have in terms of sexual assault and wounding and power and control struggles. And so it can on one level be a rather homogeneous audience.
What kind of staffing do you have? You mentioned earlier that you have lots of wonderful volunteers. What's your staffing picture look like? Where do you get your funding from? Because you do wonderful work, and obviously you're going to need resources to do that.
We really do, because with the complex set of traumas, we need people in various areas of specialty. I would say in terms of the resident staff, the bulk of our efforts are in the counseling arena, the mental health counseling, both group and individual. We need people who can work in the realm of substance abuse, those who are dealing with childhood sexual abuse, those who are dealing with trauma, PTSD, various forms of mental illness. And so that's a complex area, just the whole mental health counseling realm. Where we use volunteers is in the life skills.
Okay.
People who can come in and teach a craft, a hobby, a domestic skill, a recreation. We have volunteers who come in and do fitness programs, culinary. And so that's exciting because then we can expand our offerings using the talent within the community. There's the necessary administrative tier, you know, financial management and what. And, you know, to be quite frank, we're always in need of financial support. Our best support comes from the community directly because they understand this problem, they embrace what we're doing, they get behind the quality of care that we're providing to these ladies, and then they want to support us. And so that is a perennial need. There is not much in the way of grant funding on this issue, although we're seeing a slow change in that landscape.
If people who are viewing our program would like to have more information about the Samaritan women, how can they get in touch with you?
The website's always the best.
Okay.
And that is www.thesamaritanwomen.org.
Okay, could you repeat that for our viewers?
Sure, www.Samaritanwomen, it's got to be plural, .org.
Thank you for viewing our program today, and please join us again on Annapolis Mosaics. If you would like more information about the Annapolis Human Relations Commission, jot down the information that's on the screen. You can reach us at 410-263-7998 or by email at hrcommission@annapolis.gov. Or you can check out our page at the City of Annapolis website. Go to www.annapolis.gov, click on City Government, then Boards and Commissions, and you can scroll down to the Human Relations Commission page. And always remember the words of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., who said, "We have flown the air like birds and swum the seas like fishes, but have yet to learn the simple act of walking the earth as brothers and sisters."